So, I was asked to prepare something, and she said, the question was, could you prepare something personal? So I wrote something, and then I rewrote something. I'm actually a recovering perfectionist. And I wrote a third thing. I actually have 3 speeches, but I finally decided to go with the most personal one. So what you see is what you get. So when I was 21 years old, I had a very clear mental model of how the world worked. Obtain success, and you'll be happy for the rest of your life. Then, at 21, I attained my version of success. I got admitted to UC Berkeley. I was ecstatic. I can still remember walking up the hillside campus the very first day. I remember feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin and thinking to myself, I made it. This is it. The rest of my life is going to be like surfing out one long, never-ending wave. Well, guess what? 2 weeks later, that wave collapsed. My happiness faded. The satisfaction I had was soon replaced by an urge of striving for a new goal. My attention simply shifted to the next one. In my case, attending an even more prestigious university. I was in despair. This despair lasted for several weeks, and in a twist of brutal irony, it ended on the Harvard campus. I was visiting relatives who live near Cambridge, Massachusetts, and being the person I am, I decided to go on a stroll across the campus of the world's most prestigious university. And it was a beautiful autumn day. There were colorful leaves everywhere and the smells that come with it. And walking along the red brick campus, I remember not once or twice, but at least 5 times, this big, bright yellow sign catching my eye. The sign read, "Happier," based on the most popular course in Harvard. I was intrigued. So I walked over to a bookstore on the corner of the campus. And as I walked into the bookstore, I was confronted by a wall of books lined in the same bright yellow color. And on the books, in big friendly red letters, it read, "Happier." So I picked up one of the books, and I started reading, and I was immediately captivated. It seemed that this book was written for me. It explained why my previous mental model was wrong. And it hit home especially hard when I reached the section on the rat racer. So I plugged rat racer into Google, and Google spit out the following quote across my screen. It read, "Even if you win the rat race, you're still a rat." Ouch. So I did not want to be a rat. I still want to be a rat. And so in the months that followed, I started practicing many of the ideas and evidence-based practices from positive psychology that were described in this book and others. Big ideas. Ideas like, give yourself the permission to be human. Accept painful emotions as part of being alive. Give yourself the permission to be human. Accept painful emotions as part of being alive. That's a big one. And ideas like simplify, do less rather than more. Quantity always affects quality. And practices like mindfulness meditation, like writing down 3 things I'm grateful for at the end of each day, and establishing a regular exercise routine, taking care of my body. And I became, happier. But these practices and these ideas were and are incredibly important to me, but they really only formed one half of a process of transformation that I embarked on. The other half was more, you could say, existential in nature. It had to do with the question of, why am I here? So this search for meaning was triggered in one part by my reading of positive psychology, but also very much by my personal history and by the life phase I was at in that moment. Coming to America alone really felt like a very important step, stepping into adulthood. And with my old model of success shattered, what was this adulthood supposed to be about? So, quite unexpectedly, help came from a class I was taking in the business school. It was a class on public speaking. And in the class, we were given the assignment to bring with us a meaningful object. From this object, create a metaphor, and from the metaphor, write a speech. And so the object I picked is this. It's a small statue of a wizard. It's a Western archetypal wizard. And this is where my story becomes a lot more personal. This wizard belonged to my father, and he committed suicide when I was 7 years old. And he was the victim of manic depression. And this wizard was given to him by my mother, who had done so on my first birthday, while we were on a family road trip in the west coast of the United States, not very far from Berkeley. And the wizard symbolized the qualities my mother admired in my father. And so, from what I've gathered, my father at his best was a deep, intelligent, and engaging man. But I also gathered that he was frustrated by a deep longing to communicate his gifts with the world, but an inability to do so due to a long, arduous struggle with his own inner demons. And so, when I was given this assignment to pick a meaningful object, my mind just immediately raced towards the wizard. And in the 2-3 weeks that followed, the words seemed to flow quite by themselves. And they combined into what I still consider to be personally the most significant thing that I've ever produced. And that is what I'm about to share with you. So the piece is called The Way of the Wizard. And it's written for the UC Berkeley Haas Business School in the fall of 2009. So my father passed away at an early age. But what I know and remember of him was his ambition and his drive, not for glory or for riches, but for wisdom. He wished, more than anything, to become a wizard, one who had access to the body of universal and eternal truths. He sought it in teaching, in traveling, in poetry, in love, and I believe that at times he found it. At times he truly was a wizard, if only for a fleeting moment. Now, he died untimely and disappointed in himself. Disappointed not because he had not succeeded, not uncovered the universal and eternal truths, but disappointed because he had not tried hard enough, strayed too far from the way towards the wizard. His energies were absorbed by those things utterly insignificant when compared to the moments of clarity that he had found. Like many of us, he got lost in living, in the anxieties and stresses of daily existence. And his energies were absorbed by reading of wisdom, rather than opening up to it. So when I think of my father, I think of the wizard. I think of the duty I have to continue where he left off, to stop sweating the small stuff. It's all small stuff. Now, I'm very aware that I stand here in the business school, and I do not mean to be wishy-washy, nor do I consider myself to be. What I am getting at is that you and I both know that there is more to life than getting ahead in everyday reality. It is no coincidence that in all scriptures, all major religions and civilizations, one can find references to ever-elusive concepts of wisdom and eternal truth. I like to think of these more fundamental concepts as lying in the realm of the wizard. It is a realm I believe we have all experienced. We have all been through the eyes of the wizard, perhaps silenced and awed by the beauty in nature, or the innocence in the eyes of a child, or the fleeting realization that all our anxieties are insignificant when considered relative to the fact that we are here, now, alive, breathing. Make no mistake, the wizard is not a tall male with a long beard and great blue eyes. The wizard is that part of us, the part which we call wise. The wizard is no one person. He is not old or young. The wizard is in you, but is not you. It is something which manifests itself in different people, at different times, in different proportions. And most of us will realize it only fleetingly. Some of us may not realize it at all. And a very small number of us may be able to call on it at will. Those are the ones that we call wizards, the ones we identify as truly wise. Now, why do I tell you this? I tell you this because, as much as I believe that wisdom cannot be taught, only recognized, I believe that we can open or close ourselves to it. Now, opening up does not guarantee its universal or eternal truth, but it increases our chances of attaining just a glimpse of it. And that's worth it. In fact, it's absolutely necessary. Not only for you, but for society at large. For at times I fear that the wizard is dying, that his wisdom will be lost in the material jungle, the skyscrapers and the digital and the physical clouds that preoccupy our minds. We can't let that happen. We must not let that happen. So, I cannot tell you what we are looking for in any kind of step 1 or step 5 manner. Nor do I believe can the wisest of wizards. All I can tell you is that if we close our minds, we are likely to remain ignorant. And if we open them as far as we possibly can, then we may find a glimpse of truth. And that truth will be more free than anything that you can imagine. That's what I believe. That is why I urge you to join me in seeking the life that we have lost in living, and the wisdom that we have lost in knowledge along the way of the wizard. Thank you. a lot of outer listening, I thought maybe it would be nice to transition into a little bit of a meditation. This is something that a very dear friend of mine shared with me recently, and I think it's just beautiful. So if you would all join me, I'm going to sit on the lovely bench over there, and yeah, just listen.